Welcome to Nightmares Incorporated, where our goal is to make your sleep anything but restful. So sit back, relax, and enjoy tonight's tale, entitled The Hollow Man. I'm sitting in my small room staring out the window at the rain, watching for them. They often come with the rain, and trapped where I am, I want to see them as soon as possible. Although I don't know where I'll run to if they decide to come for me now. The rain falls in sheets, almost looking like the world outside is underwater. The wind is blowing through the trees, bending them at an angle, blasting torrents of rain against my window on occasion. The lights flicker once, twice, but stay on, much to my relief. Even with the medication they have me on in here, my heart jumped when those lights flickered. That was another sign that they're near. I've been a resident of Sunny Cove Psychiatric Hospital for the last 8 months. If you don't count my 2 escape attempts, I think I've been a pretty good sport about it. They increased the drugs I was on a bit after the second one, sent me into a fog for a little while, until I found a way to fool them again. I can't be drugged. Being locked up is bad enough, but without my mind, I'd be defenseless if they came for me. And they will. I know they will. I don't belong in this place with its silly-ass name. Why did they give them names like that in the first place? Sunny Cove, Serene Minds, Peaceful Path, Mindful Manor. They all mean the same thing, don't they? The Funny Farm, the Nut House, insane asylums. That's what they are, so why dress it up with a pretty name? These are places that crazy people get tucked away far from normal society. And I don't belong here, because I'm not crazy. But like Denzel said more than once in that movie where he played the corrupt cop, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. What they know is that a little over a year ago, 2 people were gunned down with a shotgun. What they could prove is that I was holding that shotgun. Not guilty by reason of insanity was their verdict, and Sunny Cove became my new home for the foreseeable future. Paranoid schizophrenia with hallucinations and a side of megalomania, or a messiah complex depending on who you're talking to, is my current diagnosis. Although they also use terms such as PTSD, childhood trauma, and a few others when they think I'm not listening to them talk about me. But I listen to everything. I watch everything. Because they don't know about the Hollow Man. My problem is that I can't prove that the Hollow Man exists. I meet with my new shrink today, meaning I'll have to tell the same story again. The same story I've been telling every doctor they've put me in front of since the police brought me in that night 18 months ago. This new guy will be my second shrink in the last 8 months. Guess I was starting to make too much sense to the first guy. That's the only reason I can think of. I don't think I hurt him when I tried to escape. I guess he might be scared of me, but I think I was making too much sense. My pa used to say that when the insane starts making sense to folks who fancy themselves as sane, they tend to run as far away from it as they can. The whole thing's a waste of time, but I need to play along. I need to behave. I only recently regained all my senses, so I need to toe the line until I see an opening to get out. I don't think I'll get another opportunity if I fail again. And the Hollow Man could come for me any day now. So I gotta be smart. The orderlies come to fetch me for my session. We walk the plain halls, both of them walking behind me in silence. That's okay. I'm not much of a conversationalist. Instead of making small talk, I look at the soft blue color of the walls and listen to the ambient music that wouldn't feel out of place in a hotel elevator. I suppose the muted colors of the place and the ever-present music are supposed to have a calming effect on a disturbed mind. I can't speak to that, because I've felt like it's been driving me crazy since I got here. We reach the therapy room, and I'm greeted by a smartly dressed man wearing glasses and giving me a friendly smile. Almost everyone wears a friendly smile around this place, I've noticed. They wear 'em like masks. Reminds me of them. "Hello, Carl," the man says, and offers me his hand in introduction. I shake his hand, noticing his almost imperceptible head nod to the orderlies, telling them that they're free to leave the room. But I know that they would be right outside just in case. "My name is Dr. Moore. I'll be taking over your sessions from now on," the man continues. "Would you like to have a seat, Carl?" The doctor gestures towards a chair, the fake smile still plastered on his face. He knows who I am, what they say I've done. I'm sure he's gone over the notes left from the previous shrink. Yet still, the fake smile, the false warmth, the calm tone of voice telling me that he's my buddy, he's my friend. I take a seat in the chair without a word, understanding that his invitation to do so was not a request, it was just phrased to sound like one. Dr. Moore takes a seat across from me, a small notebook in his hands, fake smile still there. "How are you feeling today, Carl?" "I'm feeling all right," I respond. It's the expected answer. "Good to hear," the doctor says. "Has the medication been balancing things out all right?" "Yeah," I lie. "Been feeling clearer lately." "Good, Carl, good," Dr. Moore says in the voice of a man talking to a dull but determined student. I don't think the man notices his patronizing tone of voice. I think for men like him, it's just how they come to talk to people they see as beneath them. "So, Carl, I'd like to talk about why you're here." "You got the notes from Dr. Pierce," I reply. "That should tell you everything you need to know." "I do have Dr. Pierce's notes," Dr. Moore says. "And while I respect the observations of my colleagues, I prefer to form my own opinion about things. So I would far prefer hearing your point of view, rather than reading someone else's interpretation of your point of view." "Just seems like a waste of time to me," I say in response. "You're not going to believe me anyway. You think I'm crazy." "It's a bit presumptuous to assume that you know what I think, Carl," the doctor replies. "So you don't think I'm crazy?" I asked. "I just met you, Carl. I have formed no opinion of you whatsoever. I understand that that's hard for you to believe, but it's true. I know what you've been accused of, that it has something to do with an entity you refer to as the Hollow Men. I'm aware of my predecessor's initial diagnosis, as I am aware of your previous escape attempts. But as far as who you are, and what events brought you to this very moment, I can only learn from you, Carl. If you're willing to talk to me, that is. I won't force you to talk, of course." We sat in silence for a moment, the sound of the rain against the window in the room drowning out the monotonous music playing in the halls. "Fuck it," I say finally. "It's not like I'm going anywhere. Might as well fill the time with talk." "I'm gonna have to wind the clock back a bit," I add. "Start wherever you like," Dr. Moore invites. "I want to understand what happened, Carl, so the more information you can give me, the better." I take a deep breath, preparing to waste my time again with someone who won't believe a word I have to say, and begin. My father was the first person to tell me about the Hollow Men. I think I was around 10 at the time. I grew up on a farm in South Carolina. It wasn't a big farm, but it provided for us. My pa mainly worked the fields himself, although come harvest time, he'd always hire a couple of hands to help. He was a hard-working, hard-drinking man. I think even when I was younger, I knew he drank too much, smoked too much, and always seemed a bit on edge. I knew that Pa had been in the army and spent some time overseas. I knew that he had fought in the war, as he always called it. He never said the word Vietnam, like the word itself was a curse. He spent 2 years in country, from 1973 to when the war ended in 75. I suppose that's what made it easy for the authorities to blame what happened on shell shock, as it was called in those days. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Pa came in from the fields one evening and called me and my younger brother Tyson into the family room. Dutifully, we did as bid, as although my father was always good to us, we had learned not to disobey him or rile his temper. We sat cross-legged on the carpeted floor of our small farmhouse, Pa sitting across from us as he would during games of Uno. "It's time for me to share something with you two," Pa had begun. And although he was speaking to both of us, even then I knew he was mainly talking to me. "With your ma being gone, I'm gonna need you two to take up some extra responsibilities because some things have changed. Particularly you, Carl." "Yes, sir," we responded in unison. And Ma being gone is always how it was phrased. Ma had gone missing 7 years ago. I barely had any memories of her, and I doubt Tyson had any at all. I didn't know if she had died, run off with another man, or just left us all for no reason in particular. I just knew what Pa said, and all he ever said on the subject was that she was gone. "Won't be much of a change for you two," Pa had continued. "All your chores will be the same, but it's important that the two of you stay inside when I'm not at home. And Carl, you be extra mindful of Tyson. You keep him in your sight at all times. Do you understand me?" "Yes, sir," I had replied. It was an easy reply to make, as I love my younger brother, and I always minded Pa. "I want to tell you boys something. It might scare you, but in this case it's alright to be scared. In this case, being scared will keep you safe. Can you both be brave?" We nodded in unison. Of course we could be brave. We were the sons of a soldier, as he so often reminded us. "Good," Pa had said. "Now I want to tell you about the Hollow Men. I don't know what they are, and Hollow Men is just a name I come up with, so I had something to call them. First thing you need to know about them is that they're shaped like a man. They look like a man wearing a long black robe, or a cloak, or a coat. Always one of those. But it will always be black, and look torn up or dirty. Their faces are white as plaster, and they'll either have no eyes at all or just wrinkled skin over where eyes should be. Or they'll have two completely black sockets. Like this," Paul said, and handed me a sheet of paper. On the paper, there was a drawing of the head and shoulders of a faceless man wearing a hood. Tyson and I looked at the picture for a few minutes, and I went to hand it back to Paul. "You hold on to it," he instructed. "That way neither one of you forgets. I sketched that while I was over in the war. That was the first one I saw. Noticed it from the corner of my eye one day when we were on patrol. It was just standing there, out in the trees, watching us as we passed by. This first one was wearing what almost looked like a monk's robes, and while it wasn't looking directly at me, I got the feeling that it was watching all of us. I was gonna call it out to the platoon, but then it vanished. Just took a step backwards, and then it was gone, like it stepped right out of reality. But it wasn't gone for good. I saw it more and more as the months wore on, especially during combat. It seemed to enjoy watching the violence. Usually it would just be standing there, but sometimes it would be perched in a tree, or hovering above the bodies of men who had fallen. I never mentioned it, because none of the other men in my platoon ever seemed to react to it, so I figured that maybe I was the only one who could see the bastard. Now my grandma, that be your great-grandma, she had the sight. I remember her telling me when I was no bigger than either of you, that when you got the sight, you need to hide it from the rest of the world. She'd tell me that prophets only existed in the Bible, that if Moses came down from the mountain in the modern day, shouting some nonsense about a burning bush talking to him, and a voice from the wind commanding him to write the 10 Commandments, well, they'd throw him in the nut house. She'd tell me that people don't really believe in the unbelievable anymore unless they see it with their own eyes. So when I first started seeing the Hollow Men, I just figured maybe I had the sight like Grandma. I began thinking it might be the Grim Reaper, or maybe the spirit of a fallen soldier, or maybe a curse set on us by our enemies. But I was wrong on all counts. I didn't realize how lucky I had been every time I looked at it and it was looking somewhere else, because the day came when I looked in its direction, and it was looking right back at me. It didn't do anything then, only watched me from a distance. But I began noticing that it was watching only me now. and it started showing up more and more. And worse than that, it looked like it was drawing closer to me every time I would see it. But it still never interacted with me over there, and I found that after combat, it would be a little farther away from me than it was before. Like maybe it was a little afraid of me too. I started getting as violent as I could during combat encounters, attacking the enemy with a ferocity that made my fellow soldiers think I was crazy. But it worked. The more violent I was, the farther from me the apparition would stay. After a while, I figured the whole thing was due to combat jitters, or time in country, and I stopped looking at the thing altogether. My time in that hell came to an end, and I came back to the world. But I didn't make the trip alone. The hollow men followed me. I say men because I began seeing more than one when I came back home. There would be the one in the monk-looking robes, but now there would be others. Some with the black eyes, some with the wrinkled skin, all watching me from various distances and places, sometimes disappearing for weeks, but always coming back. I didn't realize how dangerous they were till one of them got close to me one night when I was leaving a bar in Chicago. I didn't notice it at first, but on the way to my car it appeared right next to me, and the world twisted around me, becoming a perverse version of what it was before, like I was seeing the world the way they see it, or maybe it was a reflection of where they're from. Trees like the tentacles of a giant squid were bursting from the ground. The parking lot was gone, replaced with a field of dead, dried wheat. The sky was a sickly shade of yellow, and there were dozens of misshapen things walking blindly through the fields. I looked again at the hollow man who had gotten near me, but it had changed too. The black robe and eyeless face were gone, and what stood next to me was an abomination of strange rubbery appendages and feelers like an insect has on a fleshy mound that I imagine served as its head. It lunged for me, but I stepped back and pulled my switchblade. One of its limbs barely missed me. I screamed and stuck the thing repeatedly in its side. It let out the most god-awful sounds I'd ever heard, but the world around me wavered, and I could see the parking lot and the fields as if they were blended together. I stuck the creature a few more times, and as it fell to the ground, a greenish fluid pooling out around it, the parking lot came back. I didn't wait around. I got in my car and tore out that parking lot like the devil himself was coming for me. I returned home to South Carolina a few weeks later and took up the farm that my daddy left me. They've been after me ever since, but I've learned how to keep them back. They're dangerous, but also just as fragile as us. They bleed and they die. They're not supernatural, just different than us because they don't live in the same world that we do. But I don't think they're from a different world. I think they're like the cockroaches or spiders that live between the walls in a house. Only in this case, it's the walls between the worlds. They come out looking for a meal. And if you're weak, or they catch you off guard, they take you to their twisted home, and if you can't fight your way out, they feast upon you, tearing your flesh from your bones and devouring you while you're still alive. I've been able to keep them from the farm for all these years by going to the bar and distracting them with a bit of underground boxing. They love the sight of violence, you see. I originally thought that it scared them, and maybe it does a little bit, but I mostly think they just enjoy watching it. And the more violent you are, the farther they stay from you. But maybe they've grown impatient, because I've started seeing them on the farm. That's why I'm telling you boys all of this, because now I need you to be careful. So listen closely. They come most often when it's raining. I don't know why, they just do. And they can't harm you unless you catch their attention. If you see something from the corner of your eye, there's a good chance that it's one of them. It's very important that you don't look. This might be hard to do because it might be trying to get your attention. So you'll see something moving around real fast at the edge of your vision, or you'll get the sense that something is standing right next to you, its face only inches from yours. But don't look. If you do look, you might get lucky like I did the first few times. It might be looking somewhere else and you're only seeing it out of chance, giving yourself a nice little scare. But if it's looking at you when you look, you'll have been marked by the hollow men. They'll start following you like they follow me. And when they get tired of that, they'll take you. And you'll die screaming in a twisted world straight out of your nightmares. So you boys stay inside when I'm not around. And Tyson, you mind your big brother. You hear me? Yes, sir, we both said again when Paul had finished speaking. I can't speak for my brother, but I was properly scared at the time. I didn't think any of it was real, of course. Even at 10, I knew a campfire story when I heard one. But it still scared me plenty for a few days. But as with most things that scare you when you're young, the sharpest edge of it dissipated within a few weeks, and then vanished altogether. However, things started getting worse all the same. Some nights when it was raining really hard, Pa would burst into our room in a panic, his shotgun in his hands, pulling me and Tyson out of our beds and down to the floor, saying, "Get down, boys! Stay down, boys!" in a voice that was more of a slurred hiss. He'd then start yelling at something that was outside and firing his shotgun through the walls of the farmhouse while Tyson cried on the floor and I covered my ears, scared but also curious about what was outside. One time when this happened, I peeked out through one of the windows of the house that was at Paul's back. Out in the rain, in the darkness, I thought I could see something moving around, staying just out of sight. The trees looked odd to me too. It was mid-July at this time, but the trees looked dead and strange, more like skeletal hands reaching out from the ground than trees. And while I couldn't be sure, I thought that I could see misshapen faces in the alfalfa and wheat, like things were trying to crawl their way out the ground. Then the lightning would flash, and in the light, I'd just see our farm how it usually looked. Nothing moving around, no faces in the crops. And that's how things went for a couple years. Pa would shoot holes through the walls, then patch 'em up. Tyson and I would stay in the house when Pa wasn't around, and we'd sleep in shifts so one of us could keep watch out the window. We started doing poorly in school, and the principal started asking us how things were going at home. We'd answer that things were fine, just as Pa had instructed us, because they wouldn't believe us about the hollow men. They'd call Pa crazy and take us away from him, and then there would be no one to protect us from the hollow men when they came. However, the day of reckoning finally came regardless of what we did. I remember it had been raining hard that day. Tyson and I had been playing cards, waiting for Pa to get home for supper, when he came through the door, more out of sorts than usual. His eyes were frantic, bloodshot, sweat from the field or the drink fresh on his brow. "Boys," he said as he went to his room and fetched his shotgun. "Boys, you need to hide. They're here. The hollow men are here. I think they've grown tired of waiting, but there's one of them that seems to be in charge. I'm gonna see if I can scare him off. But if that doesn't work, you boys stay hid." Both Tyson and I were scared, but nodded our heads in understanding. Tyson was scared because he was still young and had always believed that the hollow men were real. I was scared because Pa was scared. I still wasn't sure about the hollow men, but I trusted Pa. I led Tyson to our room as Pa went back outside. I instructed him to hide under his bed as we had practiced. When he asked why I wasn't hiding, I told him I was going to keep an eye on Pa. In truth, I had to take my chance to see. It was sundown, but still light outside. Pa had said that they were here, and I figured that this would be my chance to finally see if they were real. I had seen what looked like movement on a few of the nights that Pa would ventilate the farmhouse, but I had never seen one for myself. I went to each window until I spotted Pa outside walking through the field, and my breath caught in my throat as I saw what he was walking towards. It was a hollow man. There could be no doubt about it. This one wore what looked like a large black cloak that flapped in the wind as Paul strode purposely towards it. It stood its ground as he approached, not seeming to show any fear of the shotgun in Paul's hands. "Get off my land!" I heard Paul yell. "You go on! You get out of here! You stay away from me and my sons! I ain't scared of you, motherfucker!" The hollow man took a step towards Paul, and I heard the sound of the shotgun as Paul had leveled the barrel and fired. I screamed at the sound and saw the hollow man thrown back off his feet, landing in a heap on the ground. For a moment, it looked like a man wearing a gray suit lying on the grass, but then it looked like the hollow man in the black robe again. I opened the window and yelled for Paul. As I did, one of them popped up on the other side of the window right in front of me. This one was wearing what looked like a white mask, or maybe it was its face. The eyes were empty, black, just as Paul had said they would be. It reached for me, and I slammed the window down on its arm and backed away, but I hadn't been fast enough. The world began to twist around me. Our farmhouse looked like it was aging before my very eyes. The world outside turning darker, the rain starting again, and the hollow man opening the window that I had shut on its arm. Paul came through the front door at that point, yelling, "Get down, Carl!" as he did so. I dropped to the floor and heard the ear-shattering report of the shotgun and the shattering of the window shortly after I did so. The front door burst open behind Paul, and I looked and screamed as I saw something that was more spider than human rushing at Paul on hind legs that reminded me of a deer or a dog. Paul held the shotgun up lengthwise and pushed against the creature, trying to hold it back. From me and Tyson's room, I heard more shattering glass and Tyson scream. "Get your brother!" Paul had yelled. I obeyed and ran towards our room. As I did so, I heard another report from the shotgun, and a deep, angry wailing sound of pain followed it. Once I reached our room, the first thing I noticed was how hard the wind was blowing in through the busted windows, and the smell of decay that was on that wind. The hollow men had come through as well. Two of them, still almost looking like people in black coats, but both having the same plaster-white, eyeless faces. One of them was trying to reach under the bed to get Tyson. The other was blocking the door, coming for me. I yelled for Pa and felt a hand grip the collar of my shirt and throw me backwards. I landed on the hallway floor, crying out as I did. But then I heard Pa's voice as he fought with the hollow man in the doorway of our bedroom. "Go, Carl, run!" Pa was saying. "The way out is our front door. You get out and you run till you can't run no more. I'll get your brother. You get now." I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay and help Paul rescue Tyson. But Paul was right. I couldn't fight the hollow man. Not then, at least. I ran for the front door, sure that Paul would get to my brother and get him out of there, that I'd just be in the way if I lingered. I ran out the front door, across the porch, and leapt down the stairs at the end. I could hear Pa yelling and cussing. I could hear Tyson crying and calling out for Pa. I could hear the unearthly shrieks and growls of the hollow man. I ran through a yard that was no longer our yard. The grass was yellow, dead, and there were things that looked like heads growing out of the ground. The ground itself was moving, like it was breathing, or like something large and unimaginable was trying to break its way through. The sky above me was a dark yellow, the soil black, the trees dead and oozing a black substance that looked like tar. I saw dozens of cloaked figures converging on the farmhouse as I ran. I was scared for Pa, scared for Tyson, but I had been instructed to run, so run I did. I ran till my legs ached and my lungs burned, and then I ran some more. As I got farther from the farmhouse, the world started looking normal again, and I knew that I was escaping the world of the hollow men, just as Pa said I would. I finally stopped in a field that was maybe a mile and a half from the farmhouse and waited for Pa and Tyson. But they never came. I was found by a sheriff's deputy, half catatonic. At the station, they told me they were looking for Paul and Tyson. They said that the people who come to our farmhouse were folks from the Department of Family Services, that they had come because they were worried about me and my brother. They said that Paul had gunned these people down and disappeared with Tyson, that I had been lucky to escape, that Paul had likely killed my mama when I was younger, and that they could just never prove that he did it because they never found a body. They thought my Paul was a murderer. But I knew the truth. I knew that the Hollow Men had got him, just like they probably got my mama too. And as I sat in the station, I cried and cried as people would come by and pat me on the shoulder and tell me that everything would be all right, like they knew a fucking thing about what I was thinking or what I was feeling. I was crying because all I could think about was what Paul had said, that if you couldn't fight the Hollow Men off, you'd die screaming in a world beyond your worst nightmares. That the Hollow Men would devour you, peeling your skin and flesh off your bones while you were still alive. I was crying because I knew that was happening to Paul and Tyson. The Hollow Men had got them. I've been seeing the Hollow Men ever since. They mocked me on that day. I found I could stay ahead of them by moving from place to place, so I did everything I could to get moved from one foster home to another. It was easy, really. All I had to do was misbehave enough and I'd get sent away. When they'd start showing up again, I'd just repeat the process. I also got into as many fights as I could, not only because Paul had said that violence would make them keep the distance, but also because I could use it for training. I hadn't been able to fight the Hollow Man at the farmhouse, so I would learn how to fight. From that day on, every spare dollar I had went to training. I trained in boxing, in wrestling, in mixed martial arts, everything I could get access to. I thought about enlisting into the military when I turned 18, but decided against it. The world was different from when Paul had served, and I didn't think acting crazy would get me very far. Instead, I'd be trapped if the Hollow Men came for me. So I purchased some firearms on my own and taught myself how to use them. It wasn't very hard. I'd just go to local gun ranges and ask people who knew more than I did for assistance. Most information was shared freely, and for years that was my life. I'd work just enough to keep moving from place to place. I'd train. I'd sign up for any open challenge fights in bars across the country. Of course, I'd see the Hollow Men everywhere I went, but they'd keep the distance. But I knew that wouldn't last forever. I knew that one day they would come for me like they had come for Paul. That day came 18 months ago. I was heading back to my apartment. The rain had been coming down steadily all day, so I was already on edge. For the last few weeks, I had noticed that the Hollow Men were getting closer every day, so I was preparing to skip town again. Every time I moved, it seemed like it'd take them a few months to find me, so I was going to head home, pack my shit, and get out of Dodge. Maybe they knew that's what I was planning. Maybe they were trying to stop me. As I walked down the rain-swept streets, I saw two of them coming towards me from down an alleyway. Ahead of me, there was one more just beyond my apartment building heading to cut me off. I broke into a run, not wanting to get caught out into the open, needing to get to my weapons. The world wasn't wavering yet, wasn't changing, so I knew that they were still too far away to pull me into their realm. I entered my building and rushed up the stairs, taking two at a time, trying to ignore the world starting to flicker around me. I reached my apartment, went inside, and grabbed my shotgun. I wasn't going to let them corner me like they did Pa. I was going to rush them, get to my car, and skip town with the clothes on my back. I came back out of my apartment and started heading back down the stairs. On the second landing, I saw two of them coming up towards me. They stopped when they saw me and backed down a step. One of them looked like they were starting to raise their hands, but I wasn't going to give them a chance. I leveled the shotgun at them and pulled the trigger twice, dropping both of them where they stood. As they were thrown backwards from the impact, I saw a dark yellow fluid splatter the walls. I suppose that's what passed for their blood. And I remembered what Paul had said. They bleed, and they die. They weren't supernatural, just different. And I could fight 'em now. But fighting an enemy that can come at you from any direction and in numbers is foolish. I needed to get away while I could. I ran out onto the street, people screaming and backing away from me as I emerged. I began making my way towards my car, keeping an eye out for any other hollow men. I didn't see any of them at the time and thought that maybe they had backed off from me after I had greased 2 of them. What I didn't realize was that there was a patrolman in the area that had heard the shotgun. He got the drop on me when I reached my car, coming from behind me and giving me the warning of, "Freeze! Drop your gun! Put your hands over your head or I will shoot!" I didn't hear a bit of compromise in that command, and there was no way I could have turned around and fired before he cut me down. So I did as bid. And the rest you know. Went to trial, never changed my story, just told the truth and wound up here. Dr. Moore was quiet for a little while, seeming to think about everything that I've said. I know he doesn't believe me, but that's not the point of this. The point of this is to look for an opening. I need to find a way out before they come. But to get that, I'm gonna need to toe the line for a little while. I'm gonna need this man to drop his guard. Carl, the doctor says, I have no doubt that you believe that story, but can you explain to me why there were 2 normal people found dead in the stairwell of your apartment? One Greg Stovers and Melissa Grand. They lived on the same floor as you, Carl. They were just headed home that day, I imagine. Can you explain why their bodies were found instead of these hollow men that you described? I was ready for this question. I had actually thought about this fact quite a bit before I came upon an answer. Same reason I thought I saw a man in a suit the day they came to Pa's farm, I reply. I think the hollow men piggyback on real people to get into our world. I think they took over those people only because they were the closest to me at the time. Or maybe the hollow men always appear as regular people, like wolves hiding amongst the sheep. You don't find it convenient that the narrative shifts to compensate for the fact that there were 2 bodies found in your apartment building? And 4 bodies found on your father's farm on the day that he and your brother disappeared? I was ready for this too. I had had a lot of time to think about the hollow men. I don't find it convenient at all. I don't think it shifts the narrative because Pa never had all the information. Pa was too scared of them, even if he couldn't admit it. The hollow men as they appear in our reality are just projections. But just like a movie, they have to have something to project themselves upon. So why not use real people? They either attach themselves to these people or take them over. Either way, it equals the same. I'm not claiming to understand it all. I can't. It's a situation where no one can understand everything about it. These are monsters that slip in through the cracks in our reality and hunt us down. Like a wolf spider that hides in the walls of your house during winter, but then emerges on a warm day for food. Dr. Moore looks like he's about to say something else, but then glances at the clock on the wall. We're out of time for today, Carl, but I want to leave you with some homework if that's all right. Sure, I say as I nod my head and shrug my shoulders, indicating that I'm not going anywhere, so why not? He goes on to say something about attending a group session this afternoon or tomorrow, to write down every time I had seen the hollow man in the last few years that I could remember, and under what circumstances I had seen him. But I'm not really paying attention. Instead, I'm noticing that he has 3 pens in his shirt pocket. They look like Bic pens, all one solid piece once you remove the cap. I can work with that. There are bars on the window in this room, but I know that the one in the day room and the windows by the front door don't have bars. The day room is down the hall and to the left of the room I'm currently in. 2 orderlies escort me to my sessions. There's always 1 or 2 in the day room, and there are at least 6 or 7 on site at all times. When I make my move, I'm gonna have to be quick, and their guard is gonna have to be relaxed. I need to be good for a while. So I nod my head and agree to everything Dr. Moore tells me to do. It's time to act like the model patient. But I can't do it too quick. He'll see through that. I gotta give him a little at a time. Let him think he's achieving small victories leading towards that fabled breakthrough motherfuckers like this crave more than money or women. He doesn't give a fuck about me. He just wants to claim that he fixed me. So I'll let him think that he's doing just that. Motherfuckers like this are too smart to realize that they're easily manipulated. My only concern is that the Hollow Men will show up before I see an opening to escape. But I've only seen them a few times through the window since I've been here, and they've been at a distance, so I should have a couple months at least. I start by giving Dr. Moore little victories. I go to group. I don't talk much, but I share just enough about innocuous things from my childhood to give the impression that I'm starting to open up. I get into the habit of calling him Doc, to help build a kind of familiarity and rapport. I become more receptive during our therapy sessions, still sticking to my story, but slipping in comments like, "I see your point there. You might be right." Or, "I never really thought about things that way." This strategy placates the doctor, gives him the sense that he's getting through to me. He starts getting into the habit of clapping me on the shoulder at the end of our sessions, or laying a comforting hand upon it whenever I pretend to be upset, or having a moment of clarity, as they call it. This all works in my favor. I want him to be comfortable getting close to me. I need him to be. I also start making small talk with the orderlies, although they're tougher nuts to crack. They don't wear the same fake smiles as the other staff around here. They're highly suspicious by nature, and they see the patients more than the doctors do, so they usually catch on to bullshit faster. But that's okay. I don't need them to be my friends. I just need them to not see me as a threat. I make sure I laugh more than usual. I get into the habit of calling both the orderlies who usually escort me to my therapy sessions, sir. I hunch my shoulders when I walk and sit, making myself look more meek than normal. I get in the routine of talking softer around them. But the entire time I'm watching. I'm noticing that in the day room there's only one orderly around during my sessions. And while I've realized that the window in the day room is likely made of reinforced glass, it's still my quickest route to the front entryway. I'm noticing that the larger of the two orderlies that escort me to my appointments always walks on the right. That Dr. Moore always has the same 3 pens in his left breast pocket. And I'm also noticing that the Hollow Men are starting to get closer. I need more time, though, so I'm gonna let him approach. I'll wait till the last minute to make my move. I have to. I've escaped them twice. I can escape them again. Also, I might need them. From what I've seen here, the people are just people, and I'm gonna have to hurt a few of them to get out of here. I think that'll be easier if the Hollow Men are near. It'll put me in the right frame of mind. Another month has gone by, and I'm starting to see them in the building now. I'll need to make my move soon. Today's the day. I know it is. When I woke up this morning, I could see one of them right outside my window. It's raining to beat hell outside. They're coming for me. The orderlies walked me to my session with Dr. Moore. Today we're talking about the 2 people they say I killed in the stairwell. This presents the perfect opportunity. I stick to my guns at first about those 2 people being Hollow Men, but I make sure to put just the slightest bit of doubt in my voice. I hesitate a little longer each time before answering a question, as if I'm unsure about my own story now. During a lull in the conversation, I whisper, "Were those people I killed?" Dr. Moore asked me to repeat my question as he didn't quite hear me. So I repeat, a little louder. "Did I kill 2 people? Am I a murderer? Are the Hollow Men even real? What's wrong with me, Doc?" I bow my head and start to cry. The tears are real because there's a Hollow Man in the room with us, and the world is starting to flicker around me. I see the Hollow Man standing near me, changing from a humanoid wearing a black leather coat to a barely human shape that looks like it's made out of tree roots. 2 bright yellow eyes staring at me, and a gaping mouth full of a predator's teeth. The room around me looks moldy, decrepit, a twisted version of itself, a mockery. I cry harder because I know it's time. Dr. Moore comes over to me, rests a hand on my shoulder. You're not a murderer, Carl, he says softly. You're just unwell. Admitting that is the first step towards... But he doesn't finish the sentence. I ball up my left hand into a fist and drive it hard in an uppercut right into the good doctor's testicles. He doubles over without so much of a sound, the air forced from his lungs by the shock and pain. I reach up, grab the back of his head, tangling the fingers of my left hand in his hair, and drive the palm of my right hand into his throat 3 times. I take the pens from his left shirt pocket and push him hard, aiming for the coffee table that always sat between us. He crashes through it with a satisfyingly loud noise. But I'm already on the move, heading towards the door, ducking low on the left side of it, waiting. The orderlies respond to the loud noise as expected. They come through the door without checking through the viewing window first. Their guard was down. As soon as I see the leg of the bigger man come into view, I drive one of the pens I'm holding into the back of his knee. The man screams, and as his leg starts to buckle, I drive my left shoulder into the side of the knee while it still has weight on it. I hear a pop as the knee breaks, and as the man starts to fall, I rise up, pushing with everything that I have. I'm not a big man, but I'm strong. And 18 years of conditioning and training send the larger orderly crashing into the other one, knocking him off his feet. I'm only wearing slippers, so kicking is out of the question. So instead, I go with them as they fall, driving my forearm into the side of the larger man's head with all my weight behind it, knocking him cold. I crawl over his body quickly, while the smaller man is trapped underneath him. He starts to say something, but stops once I punch him in his teeth, and then 3 more times in the nose. He covers up, which is what I wanted. I send my knee into the side of his head before I get back on my feet just to be sure. I don't wait around to see if any of the 3 men in this room are still conscious, or even alive. I can't, because the hollow man who was in here with me is on the move as well, and I know that more must be coming. I run out the door and see the nightmare the hospital has become. Hollow men are everywhere. Some of them emerging from the goddamn walls like I was inside of a hornet's nest. Humanoid shapes that are anything but human are walking the halls, watching me, most of them making their way towards me. I run towards the day room with the hollow men giving chase, their unearthly growls echoing off the decaying walls and ceiling. As I approach the day room, I see the orderly that's usually there. He starts to twist and change as I draw closer. Motherfucker's a hollow man. They've been here with me the whole time. I scream in rage as I rush at the thing while it's still humanoid. It braces to engage me, but doesn't see the pen that's balled up in my fist. As the hollow man reaches for me, I duck under its arm and drive the pen into its throat while it's still changing. The dark yellow fluid gushes onto my hand. It's hot, smells foul. I push the creature aside, leaving the pen where it's at as the motherfucker chokes to death on its own blood. The other patients in the day room start to scream and scatter. That's good. Chaos in this situation is good. I make my way quickly through the room and down the hall leading to the front entrance, screaming at a few of the patients that are in front of me, frightening them, driving them into a frenzied sprint. The howls of the hollow men chase after me, and I run with the crowd screaming in terror with the rest of them. The orderlies in the entry area are distracted by the other patients. They don't pay attention to me at first. They yell for calm. One of them yells for the lady behind the front desk to lock the front door, but I'm already heading for her, funneling a frantic patient in front of me like I was a dog with a wayward sheep. As we draw closer, I push the man hard, knocking him into the lady behind the desk, sending them both sprawling. The orderly that had been speaking to us sees me and starts to move in my direction. Hollow men are now coming from every other direction, so I have no time to waste. I run towards the man, hoping he'll reveal himself to be a monster before I reach him like the other one did. He doesn't though, and I feel something like guilt as I drive the last pen I'm holding into his eye, pushing it home with a thrust of my palm. I can't stop though. As the man falls dead, I run for the front door. I bust through it, hearing the shrieking of the patients, the confused yelling of the orderlies, and the hellish howls of the hollow men behind me. I emerge into the rain, the world looking normal again. I'd escaped the realm of the hollow men. I break into a run just as I did all those years ago on the farm. I don't know how far I'll get before the hollow men catch up. I don't know how far I'll get before the police are on my tail. But what I do know is that the hollow men have gotten smarter. They were with me in that hospital the entire time I was there. They've gotten better at hiding. Anyone could be a hollow man. Anyone could be a threat. The world twists as I run, changing from real to nightmare and back again. But I won't give up. I won't quit. I won't stop fighting until they make me stop. For Paul. For Tyson. I'll make the hollow men pay. For now, though, I'm free. And as the rain pours down around me, I start to laugh. I can hear sirens in the distance, but I also see a man who I'm sure won't mind lending me his car for a little while. And if he does mind, then maybe he's a hollow man in disguise. Turns out he was. 5 minutes later, I'm driving my way towards the highway, the hollow man's blood on my hands and shirt. Motherfucker had no idea what hit him. I'll make my way out the city, out of the state. I'll disappear. I've gotten real good at that over the last 18 years. I'm free. I don't know how long I'll stay that way, but I do know I'm tired of hiding. I'm gonna lay low for a bit, and then I'm going on the offensive. I'm gonna kill every hollow man I see from now on. I'll make the monsters fear me. I'm the monster now. Thank you for joining us here at Nightmares Incorporated, and we hope to see you again next week when we bring you another original story. Until then, sweet dreams.